You weren't born to fit in. You were born to shake the ground they walk on. They didn't push you away because you were weak. They pushed you away because you were too damn strong to control. They labeled you too much, too intense, too deep, not because you were wrong, but because you threatened the shallow lies they've built their fragile world on. They didn't hate you. They hated the mirror your existence held up to their empty lives. You made them face what they weren't ready to confront. That's why they tried to shut you down. They thought isolating you would silence you. They thought turning their backs would break your spirit. But here's what they didn't know. Exile is where warriors are forged. In silence, you grew sharper. In darkness, you grew brighter. They thought you were retreating, but you were reloading. They gave you hell, and you turned it into fuel. That's what chosen ones do. If this is already speaking to your soul, hit that like button and subscribe. When you do that, it sends out a signal to YouTube that chosen ones are waking up. It boosts the algorithm and pushes this message into more timelines. This is how we spread the fire, together. The system will never promote this truth unless you help force it into the light. Now let's talk about who you really are. You were never an outcast. You were chosen. You weren't pushed out because you had no value. You were pushed out because your value is so high they couldn't afford to let you realize it. You're the glitch in the matrix, the one who doesn't play along, the one who hears what isn't said and sees what they try to hide. You are the raw nerve of the universe. You carry codes in your soul that disrupt the control, and they've known it since the moment you stepped into this world. The truth is, you weren't meant to belong to them. You were meant to lead them, once they're ready to follow someone who doesn't wear a mask. And that time? It's close. That's why they're panicking. That's why they've doubled down. The more they try to suppress your voice, the louder your energy becomes. The power that chose you doesn't make mistakes. And now that you're remembering who you are, the tables are flipping fast. You are what they fear, unfake, unfiltered, unstoppable. Your light isn't soft and warm, it's surgical. It cuts through the noise, exposes the rot, and forces evolution. You are here to dismantle illusions, to drag the lies into the sun, and to shake souls awake. That's not a gentle task, that's a war. And guess what? You're built for it. Your presence is pressure. Your awareness is fire. Your comeback isn't just a glow-up, it's divine retaliation. This is spiritual revenge, not out of hate, but out of truth. You rise because you were built to, and when you do, the same people who once laughed at your struggle will choke on their words. Not because you said anything, but because your success will speak louder than their noise ever could. Chosen one, your loneliness was your classroom, your pain was your prophecy, and your silence was the loudest prayer you ever made. The universe heard it, and now it's your time. They called you an outcast, they thought you were done, but your comeback? It's going to make history. So if you've ever felt like the black sheep, the misfit, the one nobody could quite figure out, drop the number 77 in the comments right now. That's the mark of the awakened. This isn't just another video. It's a call to the ones who were pushed to the edge for a reason. Your isolation wasn't a punishment. It was leadership training. Your comeback is not just personal, it's prophecy in motion. And if you're truly chosen, you'll feel it deep in your bones. Now take a breath, because what comes next might just trigger the leader that's been waiting inside you all along. Let's begin. Number 1. They tried to break you, not knowing they were building a weapon. You weren't cast out. You were cast forward into destiny, and now they're praying you don't remember who you are. They laughed while you bled. They watched you sink and whispered about how you'd never rise. Every time you stumbled, they cheered like it was your ending. They thought they were winning. What they didn't know is that they weren't pushing you down. They were pressing you deeper into the fire. And fire doesn't destroy the chosen. It forges them. They thought you'd stay broken. They didn't realize you were becoming unstoppable. And now that you're rising, their silence is louder than their laughter ever was. That's the power of being chosen. Your very existence becomes a reminder that they were wrong, that they underestimated the wrong soul. You want to know why you were alone? Why it felt like no one could see you, no one could feel what you were carrying? It's because you weren't meant to be seen by just anyone. The universe was hiding you in plain sight, letting your enemies dig their own graves while you were building wings in the shadows. They were playing checkers on a board built for chess, and you are the queen they never saw coming. Let's be brutally honest. The pain wasn't pretty. It wasn't poetic when you were sitting in that silence, when the weight of being different crushed your chest like 1,000 stones. You begged for it to stop. You questioned your worth. You doubted your path. And even now, you sometimes wonder, was it all for nothing? Let me make this crystal clear. It was never for nothing. Every betrayal was a training drill. Every tear was a sharpening stone. Every lonely night, every breakdown, every silent scream, it was the universe molding you into a force. You weren't born soft. You were born steel, but you had to be melted down and reforged. You had to be emptied so power could pour in. Now look at you, still standing, still here. That's power they can't buy, steal, or fake. The truth? Most people wouldn't have survived what you went through. That's why they'll never understand you. You're cut from something older, deeper. You didn't break, you were being built. And let's talk about that light of yours, the one you keep trying to dim because it made people uncomfortable. That light isn't too much, it's too real. And real makes the fake nervous. You were never supposed to blend in with people who were scared of truth. You were never meant to be accepted by those who worship comfort over growth. Chosen one, stop doubting yourself like your enemies were right. Stop apologizing for a path they'll never understand. You weren't cursed, you were claimed. The universe chose you for a mission that required scars, not perfection. The universe chose you to be feared by those who thought they'd never be exposed. And they knew it. That's why they fought so hard to keep you small. Every time you questioned your worth, they smiled. Because doubt is a weapon that the enemy loves to see you turn on yourself. But here's what flips the game. When you realize your doubt was just a sign of how deep your calling goes. If your mission wasn't massive, the resistance wouldn't be either. They didn't just fight you, they fought the system that selected you. They weren't battling your opinions, they were battling the frequency that flows through you. And trust me, no one wins against the universe. They weren't mocking your sadness, they were terrified of what would happen if you ever healed. And now you are. Now you're rising, and they should be terrified. Because when a chosen one remembers who they are, the balance of power shifts, the system glitches, the liars lose ground, and the ones who threw stones suddenly go silent. They made you the outsider. But the truth? You were never outside. You were just ahead. You walked through storms that would have drowned others. And you didn't just survive. You leveled up in the middle of the wreckage. You learned to walk with wounds they couldn't even name. You learned to see through masks, to hear through noise, to feel what others bury. That's not weakness. That's elite vision. That's why you're dangerous. That's why your comeback will haunt them. Think about it. Why does your presence still rattle people who haven't seen you in years? Why does your silence scream louder than their gossip? It's because the universe branded you with purpose, and that kind of energy doesn't fade. It grows. You weren't born to live quietly. You were born to crack foundations, to shift generations. And yes, your training was brutal. That's what leadership demands. Joseph didn't just survive betrayal. He rose in the very system that tried to bury him. He was thrown into pits and prisons and walked out a ruler. But don't forget, it was never about revenge. It was about position. You don't go through that kind of fire to come back the same. You come back with sight, with strategy, with authority. So let this burn into your mind. You are the storm they tried to avoid. You are the prophecy they mocked. You are the shift they can't stop. And if you're still doubting yourself, let me ask you this. Do you think the universe puts this much pressure on someone ordinary? Do you think the fire chooses the weak? Hell no. It chooses the leaders, the legends, the light carriers. So next time that voice in your head starts whispering that you're not enough, remind it, the universe doesn't waste pain, and neither should you. They tried to break you, but all they did was build your throne, and now they get to watch you sit on it. Number 2, they scarred you and accidentally gave you X-ray vision. The ones who walked through hell without a map don't just survive. They come back reading other people's pain like scripture. They thought isolating you would make you cold. They thought the pain would turn your heart to stone. What they didn't see coming? That the same wounds they mocked would become the very thing that made you supernatural. Every time they left you hanging, every time you reached for support and found silence instead of a hand, you went deeper. You stopped looking outside for saving, and you started exploring the raw terrain inside your own soul. And guess what you found in that silence? Vision, empathy, that rare kind of strength that can see through the smiles people wear and feel the screams they don't let out. They taught you to survive without them, but they didn't expect that you'd come out of that survival mode not just stronger, but more connected, more sensitive, more aware. You can walk into a room and feel what's wrong before anyone says a word. You can look into someone's eyes and see the childhood trauma still hiding behind their grin. You don't just understand pain, you speak its language. That's not weakness. That's an upgraded nervous system. That's an evolved heart. That's the power of being chosen. Your empathy is not soft, it's surgical. While most people are still fumbling around in emotional fog, you've already mapped the terrain of suffering. You've felt the quiet kinds of heartbreak, the invisible types of betrayal. You've stared into the abyss long enough to know its name, and now when others get close to that edge, you're the one who pulls them back. But let's be real, this didn't come easy. You didn't wake up one day enlightened. No, you bled for this sensitivity. You were made to feel like you were too emotional, too dramatic, too intense, as if your awareness was a disease. But that's how the system works. It gaslights the chosen into thinking their gifts are problems. Why? Because if you ever fully embraced your emotional power, you'd be unstoppable. And now here you are, waking up to what you really are. You're not broken. You're attuned. You're not weak. You're wired differently. You're not soft. You're surgical. Your pain became a mirror, a decoder, a translator for the unseen. Every time you were cast aside, your ability to see other people's pain got sharper. And it wasn't because you wanted to, it was because you had to. You had to learn the language of rejection, of abandonment, of being invisible, because those were the only dialects spoken in your world. Now, that training is your advantage. You've become the kind of person who can sit with someone in their darkest moment without flinching. You don't need people to explain their wounds. You've lived enough of your own to recognize the patterns. That kind of emotional intelligence can't be taught. It has to be earned in the fire. And you earned it. So stop apologizing for feeling everything so deeply. That's not a burden, it's a weapon. The people who lack depth will always try to convince you that your depth is dangerous. And they're right. It is dangerous. To a system built on emotional ignorance and fake positivity. Empathy at your level isn't just about kindness, it's about clarity. You know when someone's hiding something. You feel when the energy shifts. You can spot manipulation mid-sentence. You don't just see people, you see through them. That scares the hell out of the ones still performing. Chosen one, don't you dare numb your gift. Don't you dare believe them when they say you care too much. You don't care too much. You care in a way that breaks walls, not boundaries. You care with precision, with fire, with a knowing that comes from having your own soul shattered and stitched back together by your own hands. They tried to make you numb, and instead they activated your radar. And now you walk through life like a living lie detector. That's why people either love you or fear you. There's rarely a middle ground. And to the ones still doubting their power, still thinking they're just too sensitive to lead, to influence, to rise, let me make it plain. Your ability to feel is what makes you dangerous. The universe didn't wire you this way for fun. It wired you this way for war, spiritual war, energetic war, and no one sees more clearly in war than the one who's already survived a battlefield of emotions no one else even noticed. You're not just here to feel for yourself. You're here to feel for the collective, to sense when things are off before the rest of the world catches on. That's not just empathy. That's leadership. That's foresight. That's evolution. They threw you into emotional exile hoping you'd go numb. But instead, you came back with vision that pierces masks and love that can resurrect the forgotten. You are the mirror they fear and the healer they need. And now, with every step you take, they're about to feel it. Number 3. They gave you a heart, thinking it would break you. Compassion isn't weakness. It's a loaded weapon in the hands of the chosen. They assumed your softness meant surrender, that your heart, wide open and raw, made you easy to crush. They mistook your kindness for naivety, your empathy for fragility. What they didn't know, what they still don't know, is that the most dangerous leaders are the ones who can feel everything and still choose to rise. You've been hit with a lifetime's worth of emotional warfare, betrayed by people who swore they loved you, isolated for caring too deeply, overlooked because you refused to play power games that came at the cost of your soul. And still, through all of it, your compassion didn't die. It evolved. You don't just feel for others, you fight for them. That's the kind of courage the world isn't ready for, the kind that isn't driven by ego or ambition, but by connection, by pain that's been transmuted into power. That's the rarest kind of fire, and it's the one that changes timelines. And let's get this straight. Courage without compassion is just ego in armor. But when courage is fueled by real empathy, that's a storm, that's a movement, that's leadership. You've probably asked yourself, why do I care so damn much when no one seems to care back? Why do I feel pulled to protect others even when I'm still bleeding? Why do I feel called to step up even when I'm tired of standing alone? Because that's the signature of the chosen. You were made to carry something bigger than yourself. It hurts, yes, but it also heals. And when your courage comes from compassion, your enemies can't predict your next move. You don't fight like them. You don't destroy to win. You build to lead. And that's exactly what scares them. Let's talk about Esther, not in the polished Sunday school way, but in the real way. Esther was an orphan, an outsider, a girl thrown into a palace she never asked to enter, crowned queen in a system that didn't fully accept her. That wasn't a Cinderella story. That was divine infiltration. A chosen one placed in enemy territory, built to blow up the system from within. She didn't walk into that king's chamber with confidence. She walked in with conviction. She knew what was at stake. She knew silence was safe, but silence would kill her people. And like every real chosen one, she chose the dangerous path, the one that required her to risk it all. Because that's what chosen ones do. We risk ourselves so others can rise. That's the kind of courage the universe respects, and it's the kind of courage being activated in you right now. Your presence shakes people, not because you're loud, but because your energy carries depth. Your words don't just communicate, they cut through illusions. You're not here to be liked, you're here to be legendary. But hear this loud. You can't run from this calling just because it feels heavy. You can't keep hiding behind "I'm still healing" while people are out there drowning in the same waters you crawled out of. Yes, you deserve rest. But you've also been prepared, and chosen ones don't wait for perfect. They move when the signal hits. That signal? It's been ringing. Every moment you feel the fire in your chest when you see injustice, every time you sense someone suffering behind a smile, every time you know you're meant to say something, do something, be something, that's not anxiety, that's activation. So don't silence your compassion to blend in. That's like hiding a sword, because people fear sharp things. You weren't given this heart to waste it. You were given it to shake souls awake. And if it makes the cold-hearted uncomfortable, good, let it. Because chosen ones like you don't lead from thrones. You lead from trenches, from love that costs you, from empathy that aches, from courage that feels terrifying but shows up anyway. And to those who ever tried to take advantage of your kindness, to those who thought your compassion made you easy prey, let this next chapter be the reminder that their manipulation couldn't kill the realest part of you. You didn't become bitter, you became bulletproof. You don't need to roar to lead. Your calm terrifies the fake. Your stillness screams truth. Your love is loud in all the ways the system can't fake. They made you an outsider. But now, you're the one with the keys to a kingdom they never even saw coming. And when you walk into your power with that same brave heart they tried to crush, the world won't just feel it. It will change because of it. Number 4, they called you delusional, but you were just dreaming in a language their minds couldn't translate. The visionary is always labeled insane until the world catches up to their frequency. While they followed the rules, you questioned the entire system. While they walked the straight line, you disappeared into the unknown, into your inner world, where society's chains couldn't touch you. They called it daydreaming. They called you too deep, too abstract, too much. But they never realized that what they mocked was the very engine of transformation. You weren't lost. You were busy blueprinting new worlds. And what they called isolation, that wasn't exile. That was consecration, a sacred separation. The universe pulled you back from the noise because what you were about to birth couldn't be conceived in the chaos of conformity. You were meant to think differently, see differently, feel everything on a different level. That wasn't dysfunction. That was divine design. Your solitude became your sanctuary. Your creativity, the compass that led you through inner landscapes others were too afraid to explore. You started seeing patterns, truths, connections, realities hidden in plain sight. While they were busy memorizing the script handed to them, you were editing the entire play. That's why you never quite fit in. You weren't built for repetition. You were wired for revelation. Chosen ones don't get ideas, they get downloads. Your visions aren't fantasies, they're codes. They're future frameworks disguised as imagination. You've had ideas in passing thoughts that could shift industries, heal people, transform communities, but you've kept them locked inside, unsure if the world was ready. Let me tell you, the world isn't ready, but that doesn't mean you stop. It means you build anyway. Because the truth is, people in cages hate those who know how to fly. Athena wasn't worshipped because she followed the other gods. She was revered because she outthought them. She was calm in chaos, strategic in war, creative in survival. And yes, she was misunderstood. But that didn't make her less powerful. That made her dangerous in the best way. You carry that same energy. You're not here just to survive the system. You're here to outcreate it. So why did you always feel out of place? Why did your ideas feel too wild, too big, too impossible to say out loud? Because your vision was never supposed to fit inside the old world. It was designed to build the next one. And let's address the chosen ones, still doubting their gifts, still sitting on ideas because they're waiting for permission. Stop. Right now. There's no permission slip coming. There's no applause before the masterpiece is revealed. You don't get validation when your vision is meant to disrupt the norm. Your ideas might make people uncomfortable, but that discomfort is just the shell cracking before transformation. That's your job. That's your power. You see what others miss because you were taught to trust your inner world more than the outer noise. You have insights that can't be explained on paper because they didn't come from textbooks. They came from trauma, from silence, from spirit. You learned to hear whispers in the void and turn them into blueprints. You walked through mental wastelands and came out with gardens. That's not imagination. That's genius. They'll try to intellectualize what you intuit. They'll demand citations for what your soul already knows. Let them. Because when your creation moves, it won't ask for their approval. It'll speak for itself. And if you've ever felt that tension in your chest, like your ideas are bigger than your life, like your mind is overflowing with something the world hasn't seen yet, that's not anxiety. That's power waiting to be expressed. That's your leadership screaming to be let out. Don't numb it. Don't shrink it. Don't silence it. Your spiritual creativity is a weapon wrapped in beauty, and your vision is your rebellion. You're not just an outcast. You're a creator of codes, a designer of destiny, a living, breathing disruption to the dead-end thinking of this world. And yes, it's lonely sometimes, but visionaries always walk ahead of the crowd. That's what makes them leaders. So don't slow down for people who refuse to look up. Don't water down ideas that were given to you because you're the only one who can birth them. Don't second-guess the fire in your mind just because people who live in the cold can't handle the heat. They called you crazy, but you're just clairvoyant. They called you a dreamer, but you're building blueprints for the next civilization. They said, "Who do you think you are?" And you say back, "The one the universe trusted with what comes next." You are the outcast. You are the oracle. And now it's time to create a reality loud enough to make them remember who you are. Number 5, they tried to erase you, but you wrote yourself in fire. The most terrifying kind of power, someone who knows exactly who they are and doesn't flinch. They couldn't understand you, so they tried to rewrite you, shrink you, repackage you into something more comfortable, more digestible, more obedient. But you weren't made to be understood by everyone. You were made to be undeniable. While others played roles, wore masks, blended in, you were out there alone, stumbling through the wilderness of your soul, refusing to become a copy just to gain acceptance. And every time they sneered, every time they mocked your truth or turned their backs when you showed your real self, they did something they'll never realize. They carved your authenticity deeper. They sharpened your edges. They helped you peel off the lies. What was meant to shame you only revealed more of who you really are. You didn't just wake up authentic. You bled for it. In a world built on performance, your honesty was rebellion. While others were perfecting their filters, you were learning to breathe in your raw, unfiltered skin. While they chased validation, you sat with your solitude, your scars, your unedited truth. That was your training ground. That was your forge. And now, you walk with a kind of presence that can't be faked, that can't be bought, that shakes people without you saying a word. Because the truth is, realness is rare, and the system knows that if someone truly authentic rises to power, they don't just inspire others, they ignite revolutions. They wanted you to conform, because they feared what you could do if you didn't. They knew that the minute you stopped trying to fit in, you'd break through. You'd lead with clarity, with depth, with integrity that couldn't be bought or silenced. And the world doesn't know what to do with a leader like that, so it tries to shame them into silence. But you didn't stay quiet. You chose you. And that choice, that was the turning point. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped dressing down your energy. You stopped trying to blend into rooms you were meant to stand out in. You began to own your fire. And let me tell you something, that is terrifying to them. Because now you're not just alive, you're awake. Sigurd was raised in the shadows, far from the legacy that ran in his blood. He didn't know who he was, not at first. Like you, he faced exile before identity, rejection before recognition. But when the truth was revealed, when the fire of his destiny caught flame, he didn't run. He forged his sword and faced the dragon. That's not just mythology, that's your mirror. You spent years thinking there was something wrong with you. Too intense, too strange, too honest, too loud, too sensitive. But now, you see it for what it was. You were too real for a fake world, too awake in a society addicted to sleep. And every piece of you they tried to make you hate was the very thing you needed to rise. They thought they were breaking you. You were just shedding what wasn't yours. And now that you've claimed your true self, fully, unapologetically, permanently, you're dangerous. Because authenticity isn't just a trait. It's armor, it's clarity, it's power. And no mask-wearing puppet can compete with a soul who's fully embodied. Here's the kicker. The more you lean into who you really are, the more people will follow you. Not because you're trying to lead them, but because you remind them of who they are. You light up their dormant truth just by being loud with yours. That's leadership. That's legacy. That's chosen energy. And for the ones still hiding pieces of themselves to be liked, accepted, or safe, listen up. Conformity is not safety. It's a cage. And every second you dilute yourself for comfort, you betray the very purpose you were chosen for. The world doesn't need another filtered face. It needs the truth, uncut. It needs you, whole and raw and real. So walk boldly with your scars showing. Speak with your voice shaking if you have to. Be the unfiltered blueprint that disrupts the artificial. Be the fire that burns down every lie that ever tried to define you. You're not too much. You're just too rare. You're not misunderstood. You're misplaced. Until now. Because now the world is shifting. The old rules are crumbling. And who better to lead in this chaos than the one who thrived in it? The one who was cast out, torn down, and still chose to show up exactly as they are? You are not an outcast. You are the original. And your comeback? It won't just shock them. It will strip the lies off the entire system. Number 6. They left you alone, but solitude was your swordsmith. You were never abandoned. You were being carved into something that noise could never create. They thought leaving you alone would break you. They thought silence would make you disappear. They didn't know that solitude is where chosen ones are sculpted. They thought you'd go mad in your isolation, but you didn't. You went deep. You turned inward. You went to war with your shadows and came out carrying your own light. While they scrolled, numbed, distracted, and clung to the safety of the crowd, you stood alone, unseen, misunderstood, ghosted by those who said they'd stay, laughed at by those who couldn't understand the power of stillness. But you didn't collapse. You calculated. You studied yourself like a battlefield. You dissected your pain, rewired your beliefs, shattered old identities, and rebuilt your soul from the bones up. And now you don't flinch when the world shakes, because you've already walked through earthquakes alone. You don't panic in chaos, because you've dined with chaos in silence. You don't get rattled by loss, because you've already lost versions of yourself that were harder to let go of than any relationship. You didn't just survive your solitude, you mined it. You found the real you beneath the noise, and that's something most people never do in a lifetime. Let me make something crystal clear. The strength you carry, it wasn't given. It was forged, and it doesn't come with applause. It comes with scars. You didn't get strong from lifting weights. You got strong by lifting your soul out of pits nobody even knew you were in. You don't get clarity like yours from books. You get it from sitting in silence until the demons shut up and the truth speaks. This is Yamabushi-level power, the kind of strength that comes from discipline when no one is watching, from suffering that isn't posted, from mastery that no one applauded. Like those monks in the misty mountains, you left the noise. Not because you wanted to, but because life forced you there. And instead of falling apart, you sat with yourself until you remembered who you are. The Yamabushi didn't train in public. They didn't post updates. They didn't explain. They became in the shadows, in the cold, in the wild, in the silence. And you are no different. They ran toward the mountain to find themselves. You were pushed into your mountain. Same outcome, same fire. And now your strength has that same unshakable calm. You walk into chaos, and people feel safer because your energy doesn't flinch. You don't scream for control. You command it by just being fully rooted in yourself. You are the steady hand in a world addicted to panic. So when people say, "Why are you so calm, so grounded, so focused?" You don't have to explain the nights you cried through spiritual surgery. You don't have to recount the friendships that ghosted you. You don't have to detail how many times you begged the universe for mercy, only to be answered with silence and a deeper plunge inward. Because that silence, that was the training, that was the breaking, that was the becoming. And they don't need to know your process to respect your presence. You don't just lead, you anchor. You don't just speak, you transmit. You don't just show up, you shift the space. That's what solitude gave you, energetic authority. But don't forget this, chosen one, you weren't just given this strength for yourself. You were given it so others could borrow it in their weak moments. You were built to carry more, not to flex, but to stabilize. You're the one people run to when everything's falling apart, not because you're flashy, but because you're real. You're the quiet storm, the calm in the collapse, the blueprint they didn't know they needed. And for anyone who still thinks they're behind because they're alone right now, don't you dare run from that silence. Don't numb it. Don't wish it away. That cave you're in, that's the classroom, the monastery, the forge. The power being built in you during this phase will echo through every room you enter later. Let it do its work. Let it mold you. Because when it's done, you'll be untouchable. They called you a loner, but you were being turned into a legend. And when you walk out of your mountain, your comeback will shake the earth beneath them. Number 7. They thought you were just watching, but you were calculating the whole time. The world ignored you while you watched it bleed, and now you know where every vein is. They thought your silence meant you had nothing to say, that your distance was weakness, that your presence on the fringe was a result of inadequacy, not precision. But let's make this clear. You weren't just excluded, you were being positioned. The sidelines weren't punishment, they were strategy. While they danced in circles trying to impress each other, you were studying the patterns. While they chased attention, you were gathering truth. While they bragged about their relevance, you were quietly building relevance that can't be faked. Insight, clarity, vision. They played the game. You learned how it was rigged. You didn't just survive isolation, you mastered it. You turned the quiet into a lab. The distance became your magnifying glass. You started seeing the mechanics of people, why they lie, why they panic, what they fear, what they crave. You saw the masks fall when no one was looking. You noticed who they became when the cameras were off. That kind of observation, that's power. Because let's face it, while everyone's busy reacting, the real influence lies with the one who sees it all before it happens. That's you, the outsider, the noticer, the silent storm. Zacchaeus didn't push through the crowd. He climbed above it. He didn't beg to be seen. He positioned himself to see. And that's you. Not down there in the noise. Above it. Not chasing attention, but watching, learning, waiting for the right moment to move. And when the moment comes, you don't ask for a seat at the table. You walk in with blueprints no one else even knew were missing. You know what makes you dangerous. You remember everything, every shift in tone, every side-eye, every micro-expression that betrayed their real intent. You watched the ones who smiled while they stabbed. You heard the lies inside the compliments. You saw who stood with you, and more importantly, who stood quiet when they should have spoken. You see people, not their masks, them. And now, while they're still playing dress-up in borrowed personalities, you've got something they never earned: clarity. You don't guess who you're dealing with. You know. That kind of intuitive pattern recognition, that's not just social awareness. It's leadership intelligence, the kind of edge that turns observers into generals. So when chaos hits, you don't scramble, you calculate. You've already seen the fault lines. You knew which bridges would burn and which ones were always just paper pretending to be steel. You aren't shocked by betrayals anymore. You expect them. You don't need proof to feel the shift. You feel the tremor long before the quake. But let's not pretend this came easy. Observation is often born from exclusion. And yes, it hurt. Being the ghost in the room. The one who knew too much, felt too deep, stood too still. People called you cold, disconnected, hard to read. But they didn't realize you were just reading them faster than they could speak. You were watching it all, not because you didn't belong, but because you were learning how it all worked. That distance made you dangerous. And now, that weird, quiet kid they overlooked, the too intense thinker, the too observant black sheep. You're the one with the entire blueprint in your mind. You're the one who can deconstruct a lie in 2 sentences. You're the one who sees the cracks in people's stories before they even realize they're breaking. And that's what real leadership needs. Not loud mouths, not pretty speeches, not viral charisma, but visionaries. People who don't just move with the crowd, but see where the crowd is headed and why. You've got that. So if you've been doubting your worth because you're not social enough, not loud enough, not out there like the others, stop that right now. You weren't meant to be in the crowd. You were meant to read it, navigate it, rise above it, lead it. Because when your insight becomes action, when that observer steps forward with strategy and stillness, everything shifts. They underestimated you, but that was their mistake. Because while they lived loud and fast, you were becoming the one who sees everything. And now you're the one they'll all be watching. Number 8, they rejected you and accidentally set you free. They kicked you out of their system, not realizing you'd return with blueprints for a new one. They wanted you to beg for a seat. Instead, you built a kingdom. Let's make this plain. Rejection was never your curse. It was your release. They didn't want you, didn't understand you, didn't approve of your choices. And you know what? That's exactly what saved you. While they were busy performing for approval, you were being liberated, freed from their script, freed from their mold. You didn't get to be the favorite, but you got something better, the courage to think for yourself. When you were pushed out, they thought you'd crumble. They expected silence, shame, submission, but instead you found your voice. You found your fire. You found a path that had never been walked before, because no one else had the guts to walk it. You didn't choose the easy road. You chose the real one, the one with thorns and cliffs and no applause at the end. You chose authenticity over acceptance, truth over trend, soul over status. And that decision, that's what made you dangerous. You became what they could never control, a mind of your own. And in a world hypnotized by validation, that makes you a revolutionary. Like Odysseus, you weren't just on a journey, you were on a mission. And every setback, every detour, every monster you faced was just another part of your training. You got shipwrecked, you got mocked, you got stripped of comfort and home and certainty. But you didn't stay broken. You adapted, you strategized, you endured, and you didn't just survive. You came back smarter, stronger, colder, clearer. And when you return, it won't be with excuses. It'll be with dominion. Just like Odysseus didn't come home to plead, he came to reclaim. He came back dressed in disguise, sharp-eyed and ready to take back what was his. That's your energy now. You didn't just go on a detour. You went through hell and became someone the old world no longer recognizes. And that's a good thing. Because you didn't evolve to be accepted, you evolved to disrupt. Every time you said no to a path that wasn't yours, you walked deeper into alignment. When you chose the unconventional career, the unpopular opinion, the wild vision, people stared, they whispered, but you kept walking. And now, that path is opening doors they still can't see. That's because you weren't walking in circles. You were trailblazing through uncharted territory. They'll call you rebellious, unstable, arrogant. That's how they always label those who refuse to be owned. But let them talk, because your leadership isn't built for their comfort. It's built for the next era, and that era needs bold souls, not polished puppets. You're not here to fit in. You're here to tear down the fake and raise up the real. You're here to show people what leadership looks like when it's led by vision, not vanity, by soul, not status, by conviction, not crowd approval. Rejection was the doorway, the trigger, the activation. Because the minute they stopped letting you in, you started creating something outside their reach, something bigger, something truer, and now they don't know what to do with you, because you're no longer waiting for an invite. You've become the event. Let them try to gatekeep. Let them cling to their outdated crowns. You were never after their throne. You're building a new dimension where truth walks unchained and the misfits rise with fire in their bones. And if you're still doubting your path because you were cast aside, good. That means you're being refined, not rejected. You're being carved into someone who doesn't need applause to know they're right. Someone who knows that the path less traveled isn't empty. It's waiting for someone bold enough to walk it first. So walk it, burn it, own it. And when they look up and ask, "Where did you come from?" you look them in the eye and say, "From the edge, from the exile, from the fire you thought would end me. I didn't just survive the rejection, I transformed in it." And now, you're not coming back to be accepted. You're coming back to lead. And now we've come full circle. Everything they used to break you, every rejection, every moment in the shadows, was actually building the blueprint of a leader. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out and stand tall. Your comeback isn't just personal, it's prophetic. So if this hit your soul, like the video, subscribe to stay locked into this energy and drop number 77 in the comments if you're owning your comeback. Share this with another chosen one, because the world needs more of us wide awake and rising. Your time is now, and they won't see it coming.